There are plenty of resources on how to be a great GM and how to get better at it, which is great because being a GM can be a challenge sometimes. However, I feel like being a good player is also difficult, and they are often overlooked when people point to good D&D shows. So I'll go over some points that should help you become a benefit to your D&D game instead of being a problem player. Since finding a D&D group is difficult enough as is, and when you find a group you probably don't want to lose it because of how you act during the sessions. So first things first, every D&D group is different. Even if the game advertised sounds like something you would be 100% down for, you may not mesh well with that group for 100 different reasons, and that's okay. If it's something minor, hopefully you can talk about it with the group and it can be changed. If they don't want to change it to accommodate you, that's totally fine. And you have to decide if the problem you have is big enough for you to leave and find another group to play with. So you finally found a group and you're off to play your first session. The first thing is you have to read the 12 pages in the handbook. What are the 12 pages? Well, starting on page 189, for the next 10 pages, it goes over how combat works. Combat is the number one thing that can slow down a session every single time. Usually it's because of two things: not knowing what to do on your turn, which we'll talk about later, followed by not knowing the rules of combat and always having to ask questions on what you can and can't do on a turn. Those 10 pages lay it all out for you. The last two pages you should read are page 173 and 174. It talks about the other half of the game, ability scores and skills. It briefly goes over what they are, where the modifier for each ability comes from, and how skills work. If you go to the table knowing those 12 pages, you will know more than the majority of first-time players, and I'd argue a lot of players in general, if how many times I'm asked how much movement they have left after standing up or prone, or if they can hold their turn, or if they can attack after dashing, etc. Is anything to go up. Now you have a basic understanding of how the game works. The next thing you should be familiar with to make sure you're one of the good players is your class and how it works. Having a player constantly trying to use an ability that doesn't work in that situation can be frustrating, especially for the GM. Obviously it's going to happen, but if you can reduce how often it happens, you'll make your GM so happy. You don't know everything, and if we don't have to look up something that you can look up yourself, it'll make running the game so much easier on us. Your fellow players will also appreciate you using your abilities to the best that you can, and it should make playing the game more fun for you too. You could either be a cleric standing around watching your buddies getting beaten by a bunch of zombies, or you could be a cleric using your channel divinity instantly vaporizing the zombies, or at the very least making them flee from you in terror. The last mechanical faux pas I'll briefly mention during combat is combat is already slow despite Wizard's best attempt to speed it up in 5e. Depending on the size of your party and how many monsters there are, a round can take quite a while. It can be easy to get distracted when it's not your turn, which wouldn't be a big deal except that when it becomes your turn and you don't know what to do, it starts to snowball. It now makes everyone else wait longer, which means they're more likely to get distracted, which means they won't know what to do on their turn, which makes it take longer for your next turn to happen. Instead of staring off into space or going on your phone, if you spend time on other people's turns thinking about what you want to do and looking up what your spells can do, you'll be ready when it becomes your turn. Sure, your plans may be messed with depending what happens turn to turn. At the very least, you'll have a rough idea of what you want to accomplish with your turn, so you can come up with your actions quicker and you aren't starting with a blank slate. This is where D&D being a cooperative game comes into play. Even if you already know what you want to do, if you look disinterested when it's not your turn, it's pretty disheartening for the other players. People would much rather have people around them reacting to all the cool things they do, or being excited when the player pulls off something crazy, or commiserating with them when they roll a natural one. That goes for all aspects of D&D. If it's a social situation where your character isn't the focus, to me that now means you're the cheer squad. You should be rooting for the other players and reacting to what's happening to them. At the very least, take notes. The person who's doing all the talking and asking questions is probably busy, especially if social interactions aren't their strong suit. If you take notes, it'll help in future encounters when you aren't stopping every 2 minutes asking what the name of this thing or that is called, or what you're supposed to do on the quest you've been sent off on. Taking notes is probably one of the easiest ways for you to endear you to the GM. You care enough about the work they put into this session that you're doing work during the game. It means a lot to most GMs. It also means if you're busy taking notes when someone else is talking, you're going to be interrupting other people. The only person I've kicked out of one of my groups is because they would constantly interrupt everyone. From time to time, that's bound to happen, but if someone is talking, let them finish their thought. If someone asks a question, let the GM answer first, unless they don't know the answer off the top of their head, and you do. There are very few situations where cutting someone off is the right thing to do. The last thing you can do to be a great player is very situational. Knowing when to take the lead and when to sit back and let someone else take the spotlight can be difficult, especially when it comes to planning your next course of action. Some groups get paralyzed by choice, so they need someone to step up and just decide what you guys should do. Then again, if you always decide what you're going to happen, other players might feel like they're just along for the ride. It can be a delicate balance. My advice would be if no one is speaking up, it's pretty safe to take the lead. If someone else did, you can always add to it after they lay out their ideas, but I'd be careful of just outright shooting their ideas down. Instead of saying that won't work, we can't do that, try something more like, I really like this about your plan, but this part of it might be a problem. There are a million different scenarios that could be explored when figuring out if you should take the lead or not, so I can't go into every situation. I always just try to remember that plans usually don't matter as soon as you interact with anything in the world anyways, since everything gets screwed up. So going with someone's plan who rarely speaks up is probably better than trying to pick the shy person's plan apart. The last thing I'm going to mention is pretty simple. If you like something in the session, let your GM know. We want to create a game that you like playing, so if you outright tell us what you like, it'll make our job so much easier. I think that about covers it. If you know the basic rules, know your class, know what to do on your turn, become a cheerleader, take notes, and know when to take the lead and when to sit back, and to let your GM know what you like, you should be welcome back at any table you go to. If you think I forgot anything important, let me know down below. But as always, remember,
through defeat you shall find victory.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means the warranty is run out on Dungeon Master's brain.